Hi, and welcome to Thete Gaming, and it's out. We've got another Dragonflight Alpha video, but this is for the Retribution Paladin, first one of these. There's going to be many. I'm going to go through the new talents for the next expansion as they are at the moment. It's going to be my initial thoughts. I have gone through this. I've spent a couple of hours having a think about it and playing about, and I'm just going to go through that in this first instance. It's a bit annoying timing because I did want to do a video on my general thoughts about the talent trees, not for this specific class, but I will do that for tomorrow or later at the weekend, probably for tomorrow. So first of all, we've got a tree on the left and on the right, and I have issues, but by and large, I'm going to say I'm okay, but for one thing. And I'll explain what that one thing is first of all, because it is on the left. Now, the left tree is your general paladin tree. The one on your right is your spec-specific one. So we can see here, I'm at level 60 here. Bear in mind, at level 70, at the level cap, we'll have more talent points to spend. As far as I know, we're getting an extra talent point each level, so we should have 5 in each, as I understand it. That's certainly what I'll be basing it on anyway. And of course, things could move around, and as soon as I'm able to actually post on the forums, I will be mentioning a few things myself, but largely I will say it's sort of positive. So if we look at the left hand side first of all, from a DPS point of view, right? So first of all, the way to do this is going to be straightforward. Focus on DPS abilities. Now to begin with, we get these two for free, Hammer of Wrath and Retribution and Crusade auras. So technically there aren't any DPS boosts to instantly go for, so we have to work out where we're heading to. Obviously, we're going to want Avenging Wrath. Nice and easy. We get Divine Steed. In reality, a movement speed boost is a DPS boost anyway for a melee. So we're fine getting that. I'm actually also fine giving it the full works here. So we'll spend another 2. We're going to spend 4 talent points just on our movement speed here. 2 to give it to last for 5 seconds. The tooltips have been all over the place here, by the way. They've been messing about all over. But it would last 5 seconds when you've spent your 2 talent points there. And why not give it an extra charge? It has a 1-minute cooldown, right? Okay. So there we're where we are. So then you're still looking at other things. Now, what annoys me is this thing. And we're going to see, we are going to have to take it. I don't want to take it. Fist of Justice. Each holy power spent reduces the remaining cooldown on Hammer of Justice by 1 second. I mean, right. And we've got to spend 2 on it. There's no getting away from it. It's... For leveling up, yeah, sure. For dungeons, yeah, sure. But we all, you know, no. But we've got to do it. There's no point in whining about it. Then the Haste. Again, there's a couple of talents where you just get in Haste, but you have to take this to get access to other things. So we're not going to complain about it. We're going to take the Haste. Now at this point, to be able to get down to this level, we need to spend another one. So we've spent the ones we have to for DPS purposes. So then we look at something else. Now there are useful ones. We'd have to go for one of these. Both of these are potentially useful. Blessing of Freedom. If there are any roots or slows, of course Blessing of Freedom is useful. In fact, I know some people will be a bit annoyed that a lot of our core abilities that we've had since day 1 are disappearing so that we have to choose them. I'm okay with that because you will find you can basically get what you want anyway. As I say, apart from the Cleanse Toxins. But I'm going to go for this because that is always useful. I don't know about you, I get into a lot of trouble. So having Lay on Hands is really good. And there are ways to massively reduce that cooldown. So now we've got access to the next lot. So we're going to get Avenging Wrath. There's some exciting things coming with Avenging Wrath later as well. Let's have a look at other things. This is weird. Seal of the Templar. What is this? While mounted on your charger, not just a mount, on your charger, which you're not going to be in combat. Or under the effects of Crusader aura. I wonder if it counts for this. Yeah, it'll count for. I suppose it'll count for Divine Steed, but it's still really weird. But while mounted on your charger or under the effects of Crusader aura, the ranges of Crusader Strike, Templar's Verdict, and Hammer of Justice are increased by 3 yards. So I suppose if it works with this, you can run to. I don't think I'm going to spend the talent point on that. Turn evil, incredibly niche. You know, if it's useful, it's useful. If it's not, yeah. Rebuke, now sort of niche because you don't always need an interrupt, but when interrupts are required, it's the melee that do it, and you are going to need to spend either that or the Seal of the Templar to get down here. So yeah, we're going to take Rebuke. Seal of Reprisal, damage. Your damaging holy power spending abilities deal 10% increased damage. Well, that's now 20% with 2 spent on it. Of course, you're going to take that. Speed and avoidance increased by 2. Well, we'll leave that for now, although we are going to end up taking it. If we go along, Judgment causes the target to take increased damage from your next holy power ability. Yes. Down here, Judgment generates a holy power. Well, yes. And in terms of pure DPS abilities, although this is a sort of one, Blessing of Sacrifice, I'll come to that in a moment. So down here, we've got Divine Purpose or Holy Avenger. So take your pick, depending on the circumstance. This is going to be one of those classic situations where under some circumstances, you're going to take Holy Avenger. Under others, you're going to take Divine Purpose. I'll just stick Divine Purpose down for now because as I set this up for the first time, when it goes live, I'm going to be leveling. Divine Purpose, more useful leveling. Well, I think it is anyway. Now, so to go down to some of these, which we know we want, we're going to have to get this anyway. So, and speed, okay, 2% speed is not terrible, and avoidance as well, but we have to take it. So there's no point agonizing over whether it's worth it. We're going to have to take it. So now we're stuck having to go back up and think, I need to spend 4 more points. So let's go along immediately. So Blessing of Protection, now incredibly niche, of course. Again, it's one of the things we've had since day one, really, but we don't absolutely have to take it all the time, only when it's going to be needed. But if you want your Avenging Wrath to have 60 seconds reduction in cooldown, you are taking it. So there's no arguments to be said. We're taking it. But that's not enough. We need more. Now, at this point, the obvious ones would be Blessing of Freedom or Blessing of Sacrifice. And in reality, I'm going to take both. I'll explain why. But if we did look at some others, just for the sake of it. Concentration and Devotion Auras. Now, I can't say that you definitely won't have to take this at some point because it's like, oh, you need to take it. We want one person with a concentration. Or in reality, your Holy or your Prop Paladin should be taking those if you've got those in your raid. If it's in a dungeon, you know, sod you. So realistically, this... And in a dungeon, roots and slows are a thing, so Blessing of Freedom is more useful. So we take Blessing of Freedom. Now, Blessing of Sacrifice. Now, let's look at this. Okay. So Blessing of Sacrifice is what it is. 2-minute cooldown. Put it on a party or raid member. Reduces their damage taken by 30%, but you suffer 100% of the damage prevented. Lasts 12 seconds or until the transferred damage causes you to fall below 20%. Okay. Of niche use. It is useful, it's very useful, of niche use. But then you come on to some interesting abilities here because you've got a choice of how to buff it. Now you can reduce the cooldown by 60 seconds. I might have preferred the older sort of thing you could do where you could give it a second charge rather than that. But nonetheless, reduction of cooldown, okay. But the next one is much more interesting. After your Blessing of Sacrifice ends, 50% of the total damage it did is diverted into your next Judgment cast as bonus damage. Or your next Word of Glory is bonus healing. Good laugh. It's a damage boost. So even if you don't really need to use it, as long as you're not going to risk yourself by using it, because I know it's going to stop when you go below 20%, but if then a big AoE effect comes in and wipes you out because you've dipped yourself below 20%, that's foolish. If you use it sensibly, that's a DPS boost to use it just in general. Just stick it on someone. Put it on someone and tell them to stand in AoE or just put it on the tank, whatever. DPS boost. The other one we could have taken here, after you spend a Holy Power, your next Word of Glory. We should stop at the words Word of Glory there. So then, on to the next ones. Consecration damage increased by 10%. So if I'm thinking, at this point, I've got to think to myself, am I going to be doing a lot of AoE or not? If the answer is yes, then actually if you wanted to split yourself at AoE, you have got more decisions to be made. But if you're purely single targets, like that's easy. No, we're not going to use Consecration. This one, well, first of all, let's go to this one. We're going to reduce our Avenging Wrath by 60 seconds. I'll leave that one for now, actually. We'll come back to that. So, next one. Reduce the cooldown of your Divine Shield, Shield of Vengeance, and Lay on Hands by 30%. So, very decent, and realistically, I'm going to take it. But for now, let's just leave that. During Avenging Wrath, your mastery is increased by 4% per talent spent. I mean, it's just a secondary stat increase. Whether it's useful or not, I mean, any of these stat increases, it's largely going to depend on what the computer says, what do the sims say, but we'll sort of go along with the idea that we will take that. This one is, I think, either reduce the cooldown and Blessing of Protection by 60 seconds. I'm going to say in most cases probably not. I mean, if you very specific circumstances where I think you would take that. Blessing of Spell Warding, much more. If you're going to take either of them, Blessing of Spell Warding in most cases can be more useful. That's the one that gives you immunity to magical effects. Then I'll come back to this one because I want to go down here, and I need to take one of these. If I'm going to be doing single target, it's going to be one of these. And here's where it gets a bit interesting. So for AoE, this is where it's, again, you might want to spend more. You won't be able to spend more. So one of your choices, each holy power you spend has a 5% chance to cause a consecration to flare up. Random AoEs that proc. If there's going to be any crowd control in the area, obviously you won't take that. If you're thinking purely in terms of single target, you're not going to take that. Fortunately, there is also not controlled. It's a proc based one, but still only on your target. So that's what you take for that. Then down here, your attacks have a chance to apply a debuff on the target, causing them to take, if I spend 3 on it, 15% increase holy damage for 5 seconds. Yes. And then down here, Hammer of Wrath and Judgment deal 10% increased damage and extend Avenging Wrath by 0.5 seconds. Yes. Now at this point, you can sort of see we've run out of points, but we haven't because we're only level 60. At level 70, as I say, we should have another 5 more. So what would we spend those other 5 more on? Now, this is where, like, all the way down here, I would say that I've spent things that I needed to spend realistically. So I think, although you could get rid of one or both of these and go down here if you wanted, this is what I mean with the cleansed toxins, right? To get cleansed toxins from where I am now, I would need to get this. So I'm getting concentration and devotion ores. I don't really want those as a Ret Paladin. Then I have to get either Repentance or Blinding Light. They're not useless, but they are of niche use. So most of the time they're useless. Every now and then they have some use. Blinding Light, arguably more so in a dungeon, perhaps. But do you want to take them? You don't really ideally want to take them. Except for those niche uses where you think it will be useful. And if you do think it would be useful in those niche situations, you're still having to take something else away. Then you've got to get this. Okay, 2 talent points spent, you'll get 4% crit. Again, it's just a stat increase. Yes, armor as well. Who cares? It's just a stat increase. Then you'd have to choose one of these. So you can either have the Consecration healing you and your allies in it. Well, for AoE, okay, it's better than nothing. Or you can have your own judgments, meaning that your attacks heal you. Or the attacker's attacks heal you type thing. A little heal for yourself, basically. And you have to go for one of those before you can get to Cleanse Toxins. Now, in terms of what I've gone for here, so that's 1 talent point, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to get Cleanse Toxins. Now, at this point, if I'm level 70, I've got 5 left. And there are other ones I'd rather get anyway. But there are 5 left. So I can't get Cleanse Toxins without getting rid of something. And you could say, well, I could get rid of Blessing of Freedom. Here's the thing about Cleanse Toxins. In a raid, you can probably do without it. It should be covered by the healers. It sometimes is beneficial on certain really niche situations. Perhaps DPS being able to get rid of poisons or diseases as well. You never know. Just helps. But by and large in a raid, shouldn't need it. In a dungeon, however, unless they've done something to other healers whereby all healers can now remove diseases and poisons and sometimes other things, which I don't think I haven't checked, but I suspect is not the case. You can find yourself in a dungeon with a healer that doesn't have the ability to get rid of either diseases or poisons, one or the other. And it's a dungeon that has diseases or poisons, the thing that the healer can't get rid of. And they'll look to you, they'll go, oh, paladins have that. And you've got to say to them, no. And, oh, they've taken it away from you. No, I have to talent into it. Oh, why didn't you talent into it then? Because I'd have to reduce my damage. Well, Ret lol, reduce your damage to take the cleanse type thing. So it's terrible placement for me. Terrible placement. Because the left-hand side is largely for the Holy Paladin, I can absolutely accept it being on the left-hand side, but it should be further up. Quite frankly, at least swap it with this. I know some people may say, oh, but the blinding light is sometimes useful. Well, put it somewhere, or up to there at least. It has to be moved so that it's more accessible. Cleanse toxins is very useful in dungeons. And you know what? You're already going to struggle. Let's be honest. I don't know how Ret is going to be in Dragonflight. But when I'm looking at these abilities, and although there'll be some tuning, there's not going to be anything major change, or I suspect there won't anyway. And I'm just going to look at it, and again, you're already competing, you know, for a dungeon spot. Yeah? And what are you bringing to the table? Other people will bring DPS. You're not going to make up for it with stunning DPS over other melee. It'll be about the same. What are you bringing to the table? That's what I have to ask. A blessing of sacrifice. If things go well, you shouldn't need it. It shouldn't be needed. Blessing of freedom. Again, you know, you can only put it on one person. A lot of these things, they're useful, but they're not something to bring a Ret Paladin for in a dungeon. Cleanse is one thing that is actually potentially useful depending on the healer you've got. And it's realistically inaccessible, because although we'll have 5 more talent points to spend, you know, 3 points could go into this. During Avenging Wrath, your mastery is increased by basically 12%. Yeah, you might want Seraphim. You may want Seraphim. Okay, that's an option. I'm just looking at it, and I'm just thinking, you know, although it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare that cleanse toxin's been there, because most of the rest of the things you're sort of okay. And I don't think there should be lots of awkward decisions to be made on the general tree anyway. It should be, look, your DPS, take the DPS stuff. That is massively out of place. Massively out of place. In fact, why not put it up there? Why not put it up there? Who really wants that anyway? Prot or holy, you know, stick. I'm not saying change it necessarily here, because then Prot might go, well, I don't want to go over there either. I don't know. But that is not in the right place. But anyway, I'm going on and on and on. Like nearly 20 minutes through, I haven't even started on the Ret stuff yet. So let's, in fact, we'll apply those changes. Let's just get that done. Then let's go to the Retribution specific stuff. Now I'll go through everything, but let's go over again if you were planning this and what you had to do. So you have to take that. You don't even get a freebie like over here. You have to take it. On to the next two. Now this very much, well, it doesn't depend. You are basically going to take both, if you'll see. But again, sometimes you'll set yourself up for wanting to do AoE. Sometimes you'll set yourself up for pure single target. It's going to be a raid boss fight. There's no odds for you to deal with, or if they are, it's one at a time. There's no AoE required. You don't need Divine Storm. You're still probably going to take Divine Storm, but I'll go through that in a minute. So I'm going to do this from the point of view, first to pass, of pure single target DPS on the raid boss. So you'll take Art of War. Then you'll look down here. So Blade of Justice generates an additional holy power. Yeah, I mean, holy power generation, yes, of course. And there's several talents that do that. So of course we want that. because for single target you're largely going down the right hand side, we are going to take this as well. Blade of Justice, critical hits causes a dot. So then we go across here. This increases the crit chance of your Blade of Justice by 5%. Well, that helps with that, so that goes there. If we go along, haste by 2%. So, okay, it's a boost. It's a stat boost. It's not a particularly large one. You don't need it to get other things. So we'll leave that for now. Shield of Vengeance is of niche use, but it is useful. And also it gives you access to a load of other stuff that will be useful for single target. So I'm going to say yes, we take that. Now at this point, to get down to the next row, I need two other things. Now the other thing is here. So we look at it and go, okay, so we do have to take Divine Storm, because even if I took that, I still have to take Divine Storm. But also we probably want to take Divine Storm anyway, reason being that it gives you access to a few things that are of single target use. So Crusader Strike now has 2 charges. That's useful. Increased damage dealt by Judgement by 10%. Yes. And in fact, we can go to the next one. I'll come to that in a moment. Reduce the cooldown of your Judgement ability by 1 second. That'll be down to, it's not an obvious one that's yes or no. It'll be down to Sims as to whether that is the best one to take in a given situation. 1 second is not amazing. You know, it's like here I've got my 11-second cooldown on it. So, yeah. So we'll leave that for now. Let's go into the next one. I'm always going to go from right to left because I'm focusing on the right hand side for the single target. So a passive one here, every third successful Judgment has an increased crit chance and deals additional holy damage. Is it that useful? I don't know. And then you can buff it as well again. So every third successful Judgment also increases your holy damage done to the next target by 4% for 8 seconds. Well, that sounds more useful. So we'll probably go down there. Art of War resets the cooldown of Blade of Justice 100% more often and increases its damage by 25%. Now that sounds useful. But there is weird talent somewhere else. So I'm going to leave that for now and I'll come back to it. Let's go along. Blade of Justice cast with Art of War shatters the earth and basically creates a consecration. So I'm going to talk about this pure single target. The fact that it randomly deals this, the fact that its AoE damage is neither here nor there, it will still do damage to whatever you've got. Is it worth a talent point? Probably not. Right? So I'll leave that for now. Again, Sim might say, well, given that it's a free consecration, don't even use a global cooldown, take it anyway. But again, it relies on Art of War, and there's another talent which does something to Art of War, which could render both of these useless. So let's go along. Wake of Ashes. You know what? It generates holy power. Yeah. Go along further. So we've got Boundless Judgment. Judgment has a chance to change to a nearby enemy. Again, it's that random AoE. If it's pure single target, no benefit. Zeal is of some benefit, but is it enough benefit? Leave it for now. Righteous Verdict. If it's pure single target, yeah. Again, now this is again weird placement. Righteous Verdict is for pure tunneling single target. Why isn't it over here? And I know some people say, oh, but it's to make you make decisions. No, the decisions you're making are, do you focus on single target or AoE? And maybe some other things. You know, maybe there's decisions with utility or something. This is just in the wrong place. I'm sorry, it's in the wrong place. Then the next one along, enemies hit by your Divine Storm take 50% more damage from Consecration. So interplay there when you are doing AoE stuff. So for single target, you're not going to take that. And if we go along here, so I've already taken that. So this one, a choice between Fires of Justice. So chance to make your next Holy Power consume 1 fewer. Holy Power spender consume 1 fewer. Or Empyrean Power. Crusader Strike, chance to make your next Divine Storm free and deal additional damage. Could be useful. I mean, if the additional damage makes it a single target boost, absolutely could be useful. So, you know, likely to take one of those as well. But we'll leave it for now because we're not having to at the moment. Wake of Ashes does a dot, may be useful. Execution Sentence. Now, obviously this is clearly a single target ability. Hammer falls doing, after 8 seconds, it does a certain amount of damage, plus 20% of the damage taken from your abilities in that time. And then you can spend another talent that buffs it, so it extends the duration. So Templar's Verdict extends the duration of your active execution sentence on the target by 1 second. Can't extend it beyond 8 seconds. So it can basically double the time that you're building up this damage for it to explode with. Now that could be really useful. Could be really useful. Again, Sims will say whether it is or it isn't. But I can see that for single target. At the end of the day, if it's not good for single target, why is it even there? So I can say, probably take that. Then you've got, now Path of Ruin. It doesn't tell you what Path of Ruin does here. It's really annoying. But what it does is it makes Wake of Ashes basically a holy power spender, not builder. And it gives it some like crowd control abilities, some slow effect and stuff like that. Niche use, not keen on it. The other one, now this is what I was talking about. So you could change it so that Art of War, instead of resetting Blade of Justice, resets Wake of Ashes. And it's a holy power builder. I'm tempted to think that might be more useful. I mean, you do have a situation here where you could spend 2 talent points and have Blade of Justice reset twice as often as would normally, because Art of War is normally 35%, isn't it? No, sorry, 12%. It's not that good. 12%. So it doubles it to 24%, as well as increasing its damage more. And you could also spend it on that and create yourself a new consecration. So there's benefits there. It'll be purely a case of simming it. Which one is the better one? I'm going to go for that now because that's 1 talent point spent as opposed to 2. You've then got, now here, Sanctification. Consecration periodic damage has a chance to grant you 1 holy power. May be useful when there's lots of AoE, but in a power gives you a holy power every 10 seconds. Now I'm going to guess the way it's tuned is Consecration. If you're studying Consecration, it will generate more than 1 holy power every 10 seconds. Otherwise, you would always just take this. So that could be, even then, I mean, certainly for single target, that's the one to take. Then if we go down here, Eye for an Eye and Justicar's Vengeance. Of niche use, Eye for an Eye is of niche use on fights where there's necessary physical damage to be taken. Justicar's Vengeance is not bad when you're leveling up, actually. But by and large, you're probably not going to take them in most situations. The thing is, though, to get down to here, you have to take one of them. And I'm going to say here, and again, the reason for taking Lay on Hands, apart from the fact that it stops you being dead now and then, is so you can have Selfless Healer, which for leveling up, maybe you take that, or maybe you don't. I don't know. Because then Healing Hands, cooldown of Lay on Hands is reduced by up to 60% based on the target's missing health. Also, Word of Glory's healing increased by 100% based on the target's missing health as well. So, okay, an emergency situation. But you could be talking here, getting Lay on Hands cooldown, if you're using it on people on very low health, down to something like 3 or just over 3 minutes. I mean, that's decent. So we'll go for that, as we have to go for one of these to get down to here. Okay, but we still need to spend 2 more to get down to here. So we're looking at this now and we're thinking, well, I've still not taken that. In reality, I'd probably take at least one of those. But I'm going to go through the rest of them. So Hand of Hindrance, incredibly niche. Maybe it'll be useful, maybe it won't. That's pure niche. Exorcism, back here now. Exorcism's done all sorts of things over the years. In this particular case, it's not a holy power spender or builder. Can't really see much about it at all. Doesn't say anything. But anyway, blast the target with some damage and does a dot over time as well. A decent amount of damage. If we compare it to, say, something like, what can we compare it to? Templar's Verdict. So on mine, with my stats, 2,477 holy damage Exorcism does 1500 holy damage, and then a dot 244 6, so it'll do close to 3000. I mean, that's a good amount of damage just to have. It doesn't build or consume, but you compare it to your holy power spender, your big holy power spender, that's decent. So I think Exorcism, again, tuning can change all sorts of things. I just strongly suspect that's going to get taken. Then Long Arm of the Law. I loved this when they brought this in Mr. Pandora. It's absolutely awesome for dungeon, things like that. And that's why it's great being on the left-hand side as well. For a pure single target boss fight, you're going to take it, not necessarily. But it is useful if there's going to be ads. You know, you use your Judgement, 2% movement boost. Brilliant. I mean, yeah, okay, if you're on a single target boss fight and occasionally there's the odd ad you have to move to, you're probably going to have your Divine Steed. But for dungeons, you know, just judging, just a 2% little boost there. I know it's only 20% and it is only for 2 seconds, but any little boost there could be quite useful. But for the pure single target, are we going to take it? No, we're not. This is where we're going to come back, I think, to here or here. Zeal is still on the cards. So is the Haste. You know, 2% haste is still 2% haste, or reduce the cooldown of the Judgment. But I think I'm probably better off taking one of these. Again, Sims will tell us everything, I suppose. Crusader Strike has a 15% chance to make your next Divine Storm free and do additional. I mean, it could. That sometimes has been a useful single target ability. And we do have... See, the weird thing about some of these specs, right, is realistically you are going to end up with Divine Storm. Realistically you are. But, I mean, this Art of War thing, if I go back to that, you'll notice it is possible. So this talent I've chosen means that Art of War does not reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice. But I can still take these talents. This talent is surely worthless. Art of War resets the cooldown of Blade of Justice 100% more often. It's not 100% of nothing is nothing. Again, this is Art of when Blade of Justice casts with Art of War shattered, blah blah blah. Again, it's not going to. I can still get these talents, and yet surely they're useless. I mean, that's got to be a big oversight there. And I know you could say it's a bit of a trap for someone getting, but someone might. They might forget about it. I know they shouldn't, but still, why? But anyway, or I could have the Empyrean Power or the Fires of Justice. I think Empyrean Power I'd go for. Again, you just choose later. So, next, spending Holy Power grants you a haste per finisher. I mean, to get anything decent, we're going to have... There's no two ways about it. To get down here, we need that. So we're going to take it. Take both. We don't have to worry too much about whether it's any good or not. I will just point out, though, that... So, with the one talent spent, spending Holy Power grants you 1% haste per finisher for 12 seconds. Stacks up to 3 times. The second one doesn't give you 2% haste. It just stacks up to 5 times. And then down here, we've got loads of goodies down here. Loads of goodies. So look at... I mean, I'm going to go through this first, right? Avenging Wrath. Might. Call upon the light. Become an Avatar Retribution. Increases your critical strike chance by 20% for 20 seconds. If Avenging Wrath is known, also grants 20% damage increase. So, of course, in theory, what it's saying is you could take these without having Avenging Wrath, but of course you can have Avenging Wrath. And then you've got Crusade, and the Crusade does what Crusade does, but if you've got Avenging Wrath, also grants you 3% damage per stack. So 3% haste per stack and 3% damage per stack. Very tasty. For pure single target, I think that. But for other things, you know, probably that. Then, you know, Liadrin's Fury. While Avenging Wrath is active, you gain a Holy Power every 5 seconds. Yes. At this point, we've only got one more, but remember, we've actually realistically got 6 more, because we should have another 5 by the time we get to level cap. So then I'm thinking these. Hammer of Wrath, 2 extra charges, increases holy damage done. It's the holy damage done, which makes it a more useful, because Hammer of Wrath, you know, is okay, it's decent, it's all right, it generates a holy power, but you do more damage, but also it gives you so that all your holy damage done is increased for 10 seconds, and you spend I can't at the moment, but I would spend another one, so that's 4%, stacking 3 times, you know, so that's got to be useful. Final Verdict, so your Templar's Bit's basically going to do more damage, and has a chance to activate Hammer of Wrath and reset its cooldown. And again, given the interaction of Hammer of Wrath there, that could also be, it could be some fairly hectic but interesting interplay there. Again, Final Verdict, I'm hoping all the things that buff Templar's Verdict will also buff Final Verdict, otherwise that would be annoying. So that would be 2 more, then that would give us 3 more points that we can spend, right? So, and this at this point, there is probably a bit of a choice, because there are some useful ones still, even for single target. There's the reduction of the cooldown on Judgment by a second, may or may not be useful. We may not, I mean, I'm going to work on the assumption that for pure single target, Execution Sentence is going to be good. And if it is good, then obviously that's going to be good, because otherwise it's a complete waste of a talent. So I'm going to assume we would have that. Virtuous Command. Judgment grants you Virtuous Command for 5 seconds, which causes your Templar's Verdict, which I hope means Final Verdict as well, Crusader Strike, Blade of Justice, and auto attacks to deal 5% additional holy damage. And it's 2 talent points, which means realistically 10. That sounds decent. You could have Templar's Verdict has a 15% chance to strike again for 30% of its damage. Again, I hope it works on Final Verdict. Or you could have, if you spent 2 there, you could spend another point there on giving you a mini Seraphim for a couple of seconds. Basically just a boost to your secondary stats. I don't know. It's all that great. This one, if I get rid of these, by the way, just to show you, this one, by the way, increases it has the second talent point has an extra chance. You double your chance, so it's 30% chance to strike again for 30% of the damage. Again, if it does work with Final Verdict, then that sounds actually quite decent. But there is going to have to be a choice, because as I say, that's 2 there. What do I need? I need to spend another 1, 2, 3. So that gives me 2 more. I could get both of those then, couldn't I? I'm not getting that wrong, am I? Oh, yeah, because I need to spend it there as well. I am getting it wrong. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that could maybe, I could put 1 onto that. So maybe it's either 1 onto that or 1 onto that. So there are going to be decisions to be made. And it's not a decision to make, it's a sim. That you'll ask the sim which it's going to be, which one will be best. And then that'll be that. But by and large, not too bad. As I say, there's a weird placement. But I think it's worse for AoE. I think I've done it for single target and it's not been that bad. Yes, this is just in a mad place. It should be over on this side. And the ones that buff divine, I forgot where it is now, but there's something that buffs AoE should be more on the other side. Just swap it. But you still do get it, because that's probably really good for single target. As well as AoE, because notice this one, the bottom ability, applies the damage over time effect to nearby enemies if the target is standing within your consecration and stuns undead target for 5 seconds. So it also does dots for AoE. So yeah, it's for single target, I would say you won't necessarily get absolutely everything you want, but you get most of what you want. For AoE, I do think there's more things you'll want. So it'll be trickier there. You will have to be a bit more disciplined, or really just do what the sim says, whether you like it or not. And it's the same over here, like I say, on the general ones. For single target, I'm absolutely fine with it. But bear in mind, if I was speccing for AoE, of course I would want the consecration's damage increased by 10%, which means I have to find something to get rid of. Which I could. I could decide there's no slowing effects here, so I'll get rid of that. But I also do think where you want consecration is where there's lots of mobs. Where there's lots of mobs, there's a chance for slowing and rooting. So yeah, AoE, more decisions to be made, more things you'll have to do without than single target. But by and large, other than the 3, if there were criticisms of it, it's bound to come into 3 areas. First of all, the placement of a small number. Most of them are placed, they're fine, they're absolutely grand. The placement of some is very odd. That I just think objectively is in the wrong place. A couple of others are questionable. The fact that you could, in theory, take these talents even though you're making them useless with this talent. I'm not saying you take this talent, Ashes to Dust, but if you did, you surely render these useless, but you can still take them. That seems odd. And I know it would be someone who's not really reading them properly that does it, but still, it seems odd. It also forces you to take this if you didn't want to take that. If you wanted to take that, rather, because you have to take one of those two. The other thing is it going to be enough to make us competitive? That's down to tuning. Is it going to be enough to make us a competitive choice when we're competing for slots? In other words, okay, you can do damage, so can everyone else in the DPS section. What do you bring that the others don't? This is where I have a problem. Because Paladins, which traditionally in role-playing games, and certainly was the case at the start of World of Warcraft, Paladins traditionally bring the utility. They're really... I'd be completely happy with making them a hybrid class, where they don't do as much damage, but they bring a massive amount of benefits to everyone else. Even though that could be argued to be tricky to tune between raids and dungeons. But still, I look at this and I'm thinking, you're really selling yourself on your damage. What are you bringing? What are you bringing to the table? A blessing of sacrifice of niche use. You don't generally plan for it in a dungeon. You're only going to plan for it on some fights in a raid, and sometimes not even then. Blessing of protection, similar thing. You know, all of this stuff you've got. I mean, Blessing of Freedom, great, but you can only do it on one person. So if there's like a mass rooting or slowing, it's not useful. You can only do it on one person. The Lay on Hands, very niche use. Yes, you could do it in emergency, absolutely save someone's ass, including your own. But it's, and you know, you can talent it so you can keep, if you're using it at clutch moments, you can have a much shorter cooldown on it, great. But it's niche. Again, you don't expect to need to use it. It's nice to have. You only need it when things are going to hell. What do you bring to reduce the chances of getting into a bad emergency situation? You know, I mean, spell warding. It's a struggle. I'm struggling. That's my problem with this. I'm struggling. And if other DPS specs bring utility as well as their damage, that's a problem. But I can't compare with other classes because I haven't looked at the other classes on the Evoker just yet. But just bitter experience tells me that is likely to be a problem. But I've gone on for a long time so far. I'll focus in on some more things later on. For now, I'm just going to take that and apply those changes. And yeah, so let me know what you think anyway in the comments below. I will, as soon as I can post on the forums, provide some initial feedback to Blizzard, and we'll see what happens from there. And I will keep updating. And tomorrow I'll talk about my more general views of these talent trees, because I think there's good, bad, and ugly about them. But that's my thoughts for now. Let me know yours, and until next time, I'll see you later.